Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Chocolate Life Live. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm the creator and the moderator of TheChocolateLife.com, and I'm here to be your host for today's live stream. We're going to be blessed with the presence of Alphonse Pignan, who's a member of the team organizing the AVPA, the Agency for the Valorization of Agricultural Products, located in France. And we're going to be talking about the 2023, the third edition of the AVPA Chocolates Processed at Origin competition. And so, Alphonse, welcome.
Thank you very much, Clay.
It's good to have you here. I understand you're in Paris, so this is the end of your day.
Yes.
Just really quick, do you have a favorite chocolate shop in Paris? I mean, somebody who's actually not a producer in a producing country, but a favorite place that you like to go in Paris to go buy chocolate.
For the time being, first of all, thank you for inviting me and having me on your platform. First of all, I don't have to date a particular place where I enjoy chocolate, but I have it at our offices during our contest when we receive them. Amazing chocolates, yeah.
Listen, I think one of the great benefits that we have in doing this is being a judge. I mean, just being able to, even if we're not, involved in the actual rating and reviewing, but having a chance to taste all these fabulous flavors is got to be an eye-opening experience. So I want to remind everybody today is that there are comments. Whether you're watching on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, you can go into the comments and you can, number one, just give us a shout out. Let us know where you're connecting from today. So what part of the world you're connecting from. And if you have a question, all right, that you'd like to ask either Alphonse or myself, put that in the comments and we'll get it up into the live stream so the question can be asked and answered. Right? And so with all that begun, Alphonse, please, what is the AVPA? Why was it started? And how is this particular competition, Chocolates Processed at Origin, how does it follow along with the mission of AVPA? And how is it different from other competitions?
All right. Thank you, Clay, for this first question, this very first series of questions. And I will start by defining AVPA. As you mentioned at the introduction of this video, AVPA is to be understood as Agence pour la valorisation des produits agricoles, that is said in French. So in English, it goes like Agency for the Evaluation of Agricultural Products. To mention some historical aspect of it, AVPA started 20 years ago with several factors. The first factor is coming from the founder or the founders of AVPA, mainly Philippe Jouglar and his associate, Jean-Emmanuel Jourde. So they have started to think about how they can put to use their experience in the agricultural sector. So they have started this contest 20 years ago to assist producing countries in their will to implement locally the entire value chain. And the experience has started with olive oils. AVPA has started its first contest, international contest, in, let's say, 20 years ago in olive oils. The concept was to receive in Paris samples from all producing countries of olive oil and have them tested by technical jury in Paris. And thereafter, from one year to another, it has come true that kind of experience was needed by producers in producing countries. And from there on, an experience has been made with coffee, thereafter with teas, and now we are starting with chocolates. This is the third edition, as you mentioned. To link it with the experience of chocolates, why the contest, the international contest on chocolates processed at origin? I will give you one aspect of it. There is a need. We have observed that local markets are kind of structuring themselves, and AVPA is there to assist them in finalizing or to coming up with clear views in ways in which they can better structure the local markets. Your mic is off.
Thank you for reminding me. So, for me, this is fascinating. So I've been a judge, for example, at the International Chocolate Awards on a number of occasions, never for the Academy of Chocolate. And I have been a judge, so just for the Peruvian only competition, right? And so for me, there's something, unusual. Number one is that you have a separate technical jury and a gastronomic jury.
Yes.
So you're making this sort of, this evaluation, right? Which is this well made, right? Which is very different from, does it taste good?
Yeah.
Right. So, and it sounds like from the very beginning, from the olive oil competition, you said this is the way things were set up. I mean, is this how it goes through all the competitions? There is this sort of separate juries, which are given very different tasks in evaluating the finished product?
Yes. Thank you for the question. One of the single characteristics of AVPA contest is its methodology. As you mentioned, there are two steps in our methodology. The first step consists in gathering a technical jury according to the contest. So let's focus on the chocolate contest. We gather for, let's say, a week in our offices in Paris, a technical jury, which will have the task of classifying samples that we have received from one contest. I mean, this is the third contest, and we have been receiving roughly 200 or 250 samples in Paris. And the technical jury has the first duty of classifying all those samples using categories. So for us to be able to compare with that which is comparable, we have to come up with categories in which each sample can perform and have its typicity well expressed. So
can I jump in here really quickly?
Yes, please.
So Alphonse, what I wanted to say is that if anybody goes to the Chocolate Life, we have this post, all right, which is specifically for today's live stream. And I create one of these posts for every live stream. And if you scroll down the page, there's a set of resources, which is links to various things you can go to. So one of the links is to the homepage of the contest, right? So where you can learn about things. There's also a link to the rules that are set forth, as well as to the results of the previous competition. So what I wanted to do actually was go to the page and talking about the rules. Now, as you and I have discussed, this actually says 2022, not 2023. Yeah. So we need to go take a look at that and update that. There's a lot going on. You have a small staff. It's easy to overlook some things. But if anybody is interested in understanding, for example, what it is that the technical jury is being asked to do in comparison or in conjunction with the organoleptic or the gastronomic jury, all of the information about how this is organized can be found here. And you were talking about classification, yes, right? Article 4, where it puts out the categories. Yeah. And this ends up showing up in the way the results are structured, right? So this is the results from 2022, and there's a category here or a column here called category. And so what we'll do is we'll find that there are these things going through. What I think is interesting, if I can, and again, this is based on my experience with others, is that, there is a group of people whose job it is to make sure that whatever it is that is presented is actually classified properly.
Yes, that's the technical jury. Yeah.
Okay. So are there any other aspects to the technical jury? I mean, are there doing any things like, this looks like it arrived damaged, or any other things before it goes off to the gastronomic jury?
Before it goes to the gastronomic jury, the technical jury has to evaluate each samples according and give it its, let's say, its performance mark And at the end of the day, they will classify different categories of chocolate, different samples according to their notes, the overall notes. And after that, there is also this, let's say, analytical aspect of the jury. I mean, the analytic in terms of how does these samples that we receive from new markets, how do they stand as compared to, let's say, standard chocolate perception, let's say in Europe or in America. So the jury has also, the technical jury also has this task of thinking the best ways in which we can come up with well-formed categories so that we can year after year analyze and see how chocolates perform. I mean, locally processed chocolates perform in terms of improving their quality, improving the raw materials, and they have to the duty of making some useful comments on samples so as to assist producers in their desire to master the techniques of making a good chocolate.
So my understanding, if I can, is that the focus of the organization is on improving the quality of chocolate produced in what I think of as producing countries.
Yes.
So at origin. But for sale in the local market, it's also about developing the local market. So if we want to increase the value chain, the whole idea is that we can improve the return of the value chain in the producing country, but there is value on focusing on growing the chocolate consumption culture there, not just in thinking, oh, everybody has to become an exporter.
Yeah, that is a very interesting question, and this is one of the elements which is key to AVPA. There are two kinds of trends that are standing together in emerging chocolate markets. One trend, or one of these trends, is let's say industrials from northern or European countries with their factories. They have their factories implanted in producing countries, and they process chocolates locally with their view on chocolate standards. But besides these kinds of actors, there are a second category of actors made of craftsmen from, let's say, Ivory Coast, Leicester, Togo. And those craftsmen have taken on them this kind of mission to come up and structure some sui generis chocolate culture in Togo, in Ivory Coast. So to improve the quality of these craftsmen implies an understanding of what are the real stakes. The improvement does not mean that there is a standard that AVPA owns, which has to be transferred to these craftsmen, because our philosophy consists in having each chocolate perform and express its typicity to the best of its ability. So we see that which makes each chocolate specific, and in that regard, we work with the producer to master to the best level the technique of processing his chocolate. This, in return, has the effect of structuring the local consumption. There is a local chocolate culture that is coming up, which is very interesting in structuring the local market.
So there are a couple of things that just strike me, again based on my personal experience. One of which was that in 2021 I was in Nigeria, and there I learned that there's very little local chocolate processing activity. So Olam does have a factory there for producing derivatives. They're the largest buyer of cocoa, I believe, in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. But there's very little local manufacturing of chocolate. Almost everything is exported. right? And
Yes.
I like the distinction between producing country, so I produce the cocoa beans, and then the consuming countries. So rather
Yes.
than using global north or global south or something
Yeah.
like that, just the difference between producing and consuming. I think it's a good way to think about this. So there is now growing, there are two trends that are growing in Nigeria that I saw when I was there. One of which is that there are more people who are looking to grow big factories, right? So what they're doing is they're capturing the manufacturing of derivatives
Okay.
that would normally be done in some place like, the port of Amsterdam,
Mm.
right?
That kind of trends. Sorry for coming. I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of trend is also seen in Ivory Coast, for instance. Less in Togo. You can also see it in Ghana and in Cameroon, for instance, whereby you can see local or nationals coming up with ideas or projects of having local factories run by nationals.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind, there is a need which is coming up.
Right. And another part of this trend is you have people who are saying, well, what can we do to grow the local culture of chocolate consumption and appreciation? I mean, consuming chocolate is not a part of Nigerian culture the same way, for example, it is of Colombian culture, right?
Okay.
And it requires long-term education, and you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things that, if I can, a differentiation between what AVPA is doing and every other contest that's judging chocolate
Yeah.
is doing, is this focus on making sure that the people who enter the contest, right, receive information that's going to make them not just producers of chocolate that might sell well in Paris or New York or London or
Yeah.
someplace like
Yeah.
that, right,
Yes.
but is going to strengthen them technically as makers, right, but also their ability to produce product which is going to meet the local market demand, which
Yes.
is also very important.
Which is very important.
Yeah.
The effects, the interest of AVPA contest is to work with what we see locally. I mean, there is a need. Let's say, for instance, in Togo, there are these participants who are really interested in mastering the process of making chocolate, because there is a local needs. Chocolate generally is not the consumption habits of Ivorian and Togolese or Ghanaian, but there is also the desire. They have also that need or that desire to have a good chocolate or good fine products like from Lindt and so on. There are some people in Ivory Coast who are really interested in having fine chocolates. And those are reasons why local craftsmen have a sense of a duty for them to structure locally the processing of raw material. Going beyond the need for them to have added value locally transformed and implemented. There is also another stake which consists in understanding well the importance, the economic importance of raw material or commodities in those countries. And it is very important for them to take on them that mission of developing a local market, following the needs and trends that can come up, locally.
So if I can, I want to take a quick moment and do a quick reset. Let everybody know we're watching the Chocolate Life Live. My guest today is Alphonse Pignan. He's associated with the AVPA, the Agency for the Valorization of Agricultural Products, located in Paris. And we're talking about the third edition of the Chocolates Processed at Origin contest. So here's the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. You can go there. You can click on this story about the contest itself. There are resources, links on the page that you can go to find out more about the contest if you are in fact interested, not just in the results of previous competitions, but if you're interested in participating in this year's competition. So I think it makes sense, Alphonse, to spend a few moments talking about the schedule for
All
this
right.
year's competition. So there is going to be a deadline by which people must register, and then there is a separate deadline by which samples must be received in Paris. And so can you give us a quick idea of how that looks?
For the time being, the dates that has been identified to receive registration from our participants is on the 28th of February. And samples are expected to be in Paris by 10th of March. And thereafter,
so Alphonse,
yes,
you have frozen, right? So I'm not certain exactly why that is. Could you do me a favor? If you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Came back quickly. Not certain what's going on. Okay. So I can hear you. Yes. Thank you very much. Right. But now I can't hear you again.
I can hear you. I'm hearing you.
Okay. So for some reason we've lost the video. Not certain exactly what that is. Can you answer that question for me? Can you tell us a little bit again about the deadlines, and then also about other parts of the registration process?
All right. The deadline for registrations is set for the 28th of February, which is in 2 weeks' time. And samples are expected to be in Paris by the 10th of March. The technical jury will gather as soon as possible, as soon as we receive samples in Paris. And thereafter, the judging can take roughly 2 or 3 days of work, intensive work. By the end of April, during the month of April, the results are meant to be known, to be sent out. If you allow me, I would just wanted to add something which is related to the needs and can you hear me?
Of course, yes. Go ahead. Yeah, no, I can hear you just fine.
So I wanted to make sure that the message is sent out to our participants to say that in case they have some difficulties in filling in the form, this year we have innovated by making it online. The registration is to be done online, or everything. We have lightened the process. They just have to go on our website, and they will have access to the registration form online. And in case they have any question, they don't have to hesitate. We will be there to attend to their needs.
Right. And for everybody, I'm not expecting everybody to be able to read these the website I'm showing you, or to be able to get the link from what it is that I'm showing you. But the link is on the page, on this page, on the Chocolate Life. So you can go. You can find the link to the homepage, all that stuff there. You can do it afterwards without a problem. What I would like to do is point out something interesting, if I can. So number one is, because this is an international competition, and you're coming into the EU, which has some fun regulations about the importation of food products. There are, in fact, also instructions on how to organize your shipment of samples, as well as how to structure the pro forma invoice, which needs to accompany the samples so that they won't get hung up in customs as they come through.
Excellent. Yeah, right? Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah,
I think it's really, really important, because I have involved in international contests, and there are so many things that can go wrong just in terms of getting product to what's going on. I also want to let people know that I have spoken with the organizers of the competition, and in April, right, we are going to be hosting a live stream where we're going to be talking about the people who won awards. I hope to have a number of judges to be able to talk about, perhaps somebody from the technical jury, somebody from the gastronomic jury who can talk about this. And then also hopefully have some winners from producing countries live.
All right? Those, yeah. I was just mentioning that those elements you have singled out here, everything can be set out for it, just to have to organize it, and it will take place. Yeah.
Right. So I want to ask a question, which I think is, but before I do, what I want to do is a quick shout out. There have been some comments that have been sitting in the queue that I haven't responded to. So the first one is a shout out to Banu, who's connecting from Paris today. Thank you very much. I hope you're still watching. Thank you very much for joining us today. And then Mark and Yuri from Denver, Colorado, who's saying, great to see support for chocolates made in producing countries. Absolutely. So what do you have to do to be a judge in this competition, right? Because, for example, I can't be a judge.
Well, yeah, you can be a judge. You can be a judge.
No, my first language is not French. I was told that my first language has to be French.
Okay, one of the specificities of our technical jury is, I mean, the general jury, be it technical or not, is to have people speaking French. We think, AVPA thinks that talking about gastronomic aspect of products in different languages can turn out to be very difficult. And given the fact that our contest is focused on typicities and not coming up with a consensus, we have, I mean, it makes sense for us to have people speaking the same language, having the same communication references, so that we can compare easily that which can be comparable. The second reason why we have this kind of jury is also to avoid coming up with consensus or average elements of evaluating different products. If I can take the example of coffee, in which we have different categories, I mean, let's say roughly 6 categories in which coffees can be evaluated. We have bitterness, acidity, and sweetness. And from there on, we have that which we call fruity or aromatic subcategories. So it is easy for people to talk about those each cup coffee or each sample that we received with the same referential languages. And so that is why we have this.
So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense in coffee because we have, a particular grading system, the Q grading system.
Yes.
And we have a vocabulary which is accepted globally, put together by the Specialty Coffee Association of America.
Exactly.
Right? We don't have those things in cocoa and chocolate.
I understand. That is one of the challenges on which we are working with in close relationship with our technical jury to see if in the in chocolate sector vocabulary can come together. Another criteria to become a judge is just to have, beyond the language aspect, is to come up with someone who is an expert or used to tasting gastronomic products. There is this technical...
They don't have to be chocolate. So you do have some people, you do have some people who are experts in tasting chocolate, but the gastronomic jury might be a pâtissier. They could be somebody who is maybe a glacier, somebody who is involved in other things.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody who has an experience in tasting products, who can talk with a well-informed vocabulary, who knows about, who has the experience of tasting products. He can also participate in this jury.
Great. So I'm disappointed. All I can say, in Spanish, I would say mi español está mejorando. My Spanish is improving. In French, I would say je parle un peu, je comprends un peu. I understand a little, I speak a little, but I'm not fluent. And so...
C'est un bon début.
I'm sorry?
C'est un bon début. It's a good start.
And I would say a little bit in Italian and a little bit in Portuguese. I mean, you have to do these if you're going to work in the language. You're going to work in chocolate, just some sort of familiarity with what it is that goes on. So what I want to do really, really quickly is show, the fact that, here are last year's winners, right? The 2022 winners, the 2021 winners are available online. What I want to do is talk a little bit about this particular view of things, because for me, this is fascinating. And anybody who knows me knows that, I'm going to take these things and do a lot of work. So yes, I have taken all the 2021 winners. I've taken all the 22 winners. I sort of deconstructed the different presentations, put them back together, organized them, got them to say the same things because they're different columns, and there's other kinds of stuff that's going on. But one of the things that's really interesting for me is that the way you've put together some of the categories. So for example, there is a chocolate. So there's a dark chocolate category, which is only 2 or 3 ingredients. So you have a category for which the only ingredients can be cocoa mass, cocoa butter, and some sort of sweetener.
Yes.
Some sort of sweetener. You don't make a distinction about whether it's cane sugar or coconut sugar or any other kind of sugar. It's got to be a sweetener, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a separate category for 4 or more ingredient dark chocolates, as long as the only flavoring is vanilla.
Yes.
And I'm sort of wondering, do you know why that distinction was made? Because as near as I know, that distinction is not made in any other competition.
How did we come up with that kind of those kind of categories? I mean, it's based on first of all, we receive samples in Paris, let's say 250 samples. And there, from the instructions that the participant has forwarded to us, and on the basis of the information on the tablets, on the chocolate tablets, we gather samples according to their ingredients. If you check on that list, you will see that we have categories in which we have chocolate with orange, chocolate with spicy stuff, chocolate with other things that can be put together, dry, how do we call it, dry fruits, and the rest. The idea is that idea comes from our methodology, the philosophy of our methodology, which consists in comparing that which is comparable. Mm-hmm. You cannot compare, let's say, a dark chocolate with a milk chocolate. They don't have the same specificities. They don't have the same percentage of cocoa mass and so on. So the idea is really to come up with an objective approach in analyzing our samples, and to have each sample perform itself. I mean, advocate for its typicity.
So one of the things I noticed that is missing here, that is, for example, in other awards, has to do with the size of production. So, for example, we don't have a difference between micro batch and small batch, which is another differentiator, which I think is interesting. But, I'm looking here, I mean, I just love, so, we have dark chocolates with lecithin, right?
Yes.
And then we have dark chocolates with lecithin and vanilla.
Yes.
And then we have dark chocolate sans adjuvants, so dark chocolate without any additives whatsoever. Yes. I love the idea of using the word fantaisie, right, for what we might, so as an overall category for things which contain lots of ingredients.
Exactly.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm just confirming, I mean.
Right. And so what's interesting to me is one of the things that I really want to know, for example, is you said that there were roughly 250 entrants in the last competition. Now, what I can do is I can go and say, well, in 2022, how many winners were there? And I can see there were 51, right? And that tells me a good deal about, how you go about doing this. Of all of the entries that were received, only about 20%.
Yes.
Right. Were actually given an award.
Yes.
And it's one of the things that I like to think about with other competitions, which is how selective they are in terms of doing it. So is there just a straight numerical rating, and everything which scores above a certain point gets an award? Or how is that actual decision about, who gets, right, the the gourmet argent as opposed to the gourmet bronze?
Yeah. Before answering that question, or to start answering the question, I just have to mention that there are 4 types of awards that can be received or given during the contest. Generally speaking, after the work of the technical jury, samples that have passed the average mark are considered to be gourmet products. They are considered to be gourmet products, and they can be roughly 30% of the participants. But it depends. It depends on the average quality that can be noticed in the samples that we receive. What I mean by that is, I will just take the case of coffee contest. When AVPA started its contest in coffee, 8 years ago, we have noticed that the average quality of those samples was not quite good, because either the roasting process has been pushed too far, either the cherries selection was not made rigorously, the conservation was not, there are elements which can justify why we have less results. But 8 years after, we have noticed that average quality of samples has really improved. So we can see that roughly 45%, 50% of samples that we receive can pass the average of gourmet products. This case, or this observation is also made in the chocolate contest, and maybe in the next 5 years to come, and after the 7th or 8th edition, we will see that the quality has really improved. So coming back to the percentage of results, that we had this kind of, let's say, cultural adjustment to deal with, in which tasters or coffee, the qualities were not quite high to reach some standards to be considered gourmet products, which can explain why the percentage of samples were not quite high. And as I mentioned, with the comments of the technical jury, our participants take serious consideration in working hard and performing, improving their qualities, which can really improve in the coming years. This year, for instance, will tell us much better.
Excuse me, understand. I just find it fascinating. I have worked on the rules and guidelines for entrance in competitions. For example, we have something here in the United States called the Good Food Awards.
Okay.
And so there are guidelines by which you need to be good in order to be entered. And so I've worked on those for both the chocolate and the confectionery category. I've also been the head judge at a number of competitions. And so for me, understanding how these competitions are organized and what makes what it is that you're focused on different from others is part of what really strikes me as interesting about what you're doing. I would say there are many aspects where this is typically culturally very French, right? In terms of organization and things like that, which is very, very different from all the other competitions that are put together. We're about 2/3 of the way through today. I want to do a quick reset. I want to introduce my guest, Alphonse Pignan, who is with the AVPA in France. We're talking about the 3rd edition of the Chocolates Processed at Origin contest. And if you're watching, go into the comments. Let us know where you're watching from, if you have questions about the competition. More importantly, if you are watching this, you are a producer at Origin. You're a chocolate maker at Origin. And what you'd like to do is you'd like to throw your hat in. What you can do is you can go to The Chocolate Life. Right? We have a page on The Chocolate Life. You can go to that page, or you can go directly to the AVPA homepage, and you can find out how you can enter this competition. What I also want to do is point out is that maybe it's not you, maybe it's someone you know. right? You're in a producing country. Maybe you're a cocoa grower, but you know somebody who you think is a great chocolate maker. You know, this is an opportunity for them to be involved. Now, what I want to do also is say one thing. In order to participate in the competition, right, one of the fee aspects of this is that you need to become a member of the AVPA, right? And Alphonse, tell me why there is this become a member of the AVPA as a requirement.
Thank you for that question. One element or one aspect of this reality in AVPA is we are an NGO. We do not work with official. We do not have subsidies from officials. Let's say agricultural ministry or something like that. So we work as an NGO. As such, we cling or we hold on our independence. So that gives us also the possibility to set out rules or objective rules for our contest to make sense in the universe of contests. So why to become a member of the AVPA? It is a philosophy which shows that by becoming a member, we believe, I mean, we come up or we join an experience of making things differently by joining AVPA, and that's the registration fees as a member are used to run our contest. As such, when we gather the jury, when we gather, we receive samples, it implies some technical fees, some technical costs that can be taken care of only by becoming a member. So it is a way of participating in that movement.
And I'm guessing there are some other services that the AVA provides, right, to people who participate in the contest that are above and beyond just judging the products, and so there are costs associated with those things as well.
Exactly. Yeah, one of the elements which is covered up with the membership fee is to take care of promoting the winning. The winners to do their promotion online and by running some tests here in Paris to make their products known to potential buyers. So those engage fees.
So for those companies who are in fact interested in exporting, right, and having their products represented in Paris, in France, somewhere else in the world. One of the ways that these membership fees are used is to help promote the contest in general.
Exactly.
Right. As well. And that's just an awareness about the contest to people who like chocolate, but who may not be chocolate makers.
Yes.
But also to be able to promote those now members who are interested in expanding their markets outside the country where they're working.
Exactly. Yeah. Another element which is taken care of is after the contest, we usually organize the presence of our winners on different salons or shows to promote their products. So it engages some process. But these elements can tend to be less encouraging for participants. So I would like to mention some elements about that. First of all, it has to be considered as an investment in understanding better one's products. This contest, AVPA contest, can help producers or participants in getting an objective evaluation of their product, how they are performing either locally or how they can think about expanding their activities. Generally, to help support those costs, which are relatively high as compared to other contests, we each and every contest we run, we start by advocating them or talking about them to diplomatic representatives here in Paris to have them chip in and assist in taking care of some share in encouraging participants to come to this contest. We also work in close relationship with, let's say, cocoa boards in different countries. But that, I mean, so far, this is our third year. So far, the relationship has not yet found its excellent approach. So we keep working hard to have cocoa boards or national institutions or to chip in and support all those fees with the participants.
So I think the thing that I'm hearing, which I really like, is there's a foundation of continuous improvement.
Yes.
Right? You're looking at things and saying, how can we do this better? Now, what I want to do is I say, we've got a fabulous question, right? Somebody on LinkedIn who's asking us from Champaign, Illinois. So I'm trying to think exactly where Champaign is, and I can't think of, I mean, not far from Chicago. So, yeah. All right, it's for you know. So it's great to hear about the competition. Thank you very much. Potentially of relevance to colleagues that this person has in Sierra Leone and Ghana. Are most of the entries from French-speaking countries? And before you jump into this, Alphonse, what I want to do is I want to show the list of winners from the 2022 competition. And we find one winner from Brazil, 3 from Colombia, 1 from the United States. We have 2 from Guatemala. I think it's 6 for 7, 8, 9, 10, at least 10 from Honduras. We have Indonesia, Madagascar, first French-speaking country that I can think, Mexico, Peru, right? Salvador, Sao Tome, Portuguese, and Thailand. And so if I look at this, of the roughly 51 winners from last year's competition, only one of the winners is from a French-speaking country. Now, I have no idea how many entrants there were from French-speaking countries. So I cannot tell you the number of Ivorian, right, chocolate makers who participated in the concept. I have asked the organizers, I've asked Xenia to give me that information so I can help answer questions like this. But I don't, in looking at the 2021 and 2022 results, I don't see any bias at all towards entrants from French-speaking countries. And as a matter of fact, you can see that most of the winners in last year's competition were from Spanish-speaking countries. So can you give me a little bit, we're about 10 minutes toward the ends, and so I want to make sure we have a little chance to talk about, your research, right? All right. So, you're a PhD researcher, you're involved in some really interesting questions having to do with, patrimonial market structures, which might have to do with, intergenerational transfers and things like that. So, it's, that's fascinating. And you were just in Togo, but your expertise is mostly in coffee, not in cocoa. I want to go there in the last 10 minutes or so after we answer this question. And the person who asked the question says Champaign is about 2.5 hours south of Chicago. I know it because of the University of Champaign-Urbana. Right. A previous life, I was involved in computer graphics, and there was a supercomputing center at Champaign. So I'm just trying to remember exactly. Anyway, making that connection. So, right. Tell me about the distribution of entrants.
Okay. There is no such we don't have a technique of distribution entrants. We receive samples from all our participants, and in general, I won't be able to mention the number of participants, the exact number of participants from French-speaking countries. As you mentioned, we do not separate, we do not select using those guides. We welcome all participants who are interested in evaluating their products and their processes. Yeah, that is it. And generally speaking, AVPA has as a philosophy not to talk about all its entrants, but only about winners. That is a choice that has been made. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a choice that almost every competition makes. They focus on not to say, here are all the entrants, and so we know everybody who entered who didn't
exactly
meet the grade. But for me, what I'd like to know is, of the 250 entrants, right, how many of them came from which countries. And now we can start saying, oh, over a course of years, we can say, oh, for example, I'm looking at this year's competition and nobody from Ecuador. I mean, that's amazing to me. And is it because, and I know that in the 2021 competition, there were two producers from Ecuador, or one producer who won two prizes in Ecuador. And I'm going, what happened? Was it just that nobody entered from Ecuador this year? Or is there some other reason? So, I'm fascinated in sort of, understanding those kinds of things.
Let's, generally speaking, I will say 20% of our participants came from Africa, West Africa, Togo, Cameroon, Gabon, from Eastern Africa also, Uganda, and so on. About 35% to 40% of our participants came from Latin America, Peru, Ecuador. The 15% came from the Pacific area, Vanuatu and the rest. There are also some samples which came from Asia. We have some participants from Taiwan and the rest. So roughly, this is how entrants come. But Latin America is quite dynamic in coming to.
There's a lot of government support, specifically in Peru. I'm told the number of small makers in Peru is now over 500, right? So, which is great. And I can also tell you from looking at the 2020-2021 results is that there are, in fact, winners from Nicaragua, from, I've got to go there, the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Vietnam. You mentioned Gabon. It turns out to be actually a global distribution, which is really good as well. But let's talk about this. You're just back in Togo. I don't know anybody who thinks of Togo as a serious cocoa producing country. And you're involved in promoting the AVPA's efforts in Africa generally, not just in coffee, but in cocoa. Do they grow tea? I think they must, right? I'm not sure. Probably not big producers of olive oil.
Not big producers of tea. In West Africa, we don't have tea producing countries, but mainly infusions. I don't know if that is the proper way.
Tisane or infusion of things which aren't camellia.
Tea producing area is focused in East Africa, Rwanda, Uganda, and Malawi. You have tea from those regions. In Cameroon also you can have tea. Togo is not. Togo is considered Togo, Ivory Coast. In West Africa, they have this coffee producing countries tend to be also cocoa producing countries. Those are two products that evolve in some kind of close relationship. Togo is not well known for the volumes of its production, but it has some productions, and the global volume goes around 10,000 ton, 15,000 ton per year, which is not an important volume as compared to Ivory Coast, which has 2 million tons roughly each year.
But I think it's about the same amount as Venezuela is exporting. Just to get that 15,000 metric tons is just to get a rough idea on things.
Yeah. So it is all the cocoa from Togo is allegedly known for its fineness and the effort that are made by producers to have some organic cocoa with less chemical entrants, with some efforts to include women in the processing of Togolese cocoa. So those are the elements or the intellectual elements around which the cocoa sector in Togo evolves.
So again, there's this fabulous book. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called "Crafting the Culture and History of
In
French
history, yeah.
Chocolate." I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was mentioning the title as well.
okay. So, I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it just opened up my eyes in terms of understanding the history of French chocolate. And, your research seems to touch, I mean, I don't know the details of it, but you are in the middle of your PhD thesis work. You're a PhD
Yes.
candidate, right? And studying some of these structures. So I'm really, really interested in knowing, just following it on because, how cacao farms, if this is a part of it, pass from generation to generation, right? And organizational structures, you find culture and language, which makes organization of some kinds in Cote d'Ivoire more difficult than they do in Ghana, which is not a language problem. It's just, well, it is a language problem, right? But it has nothing to do with French versus English. So I'm really, really curious to understand, your take on these kinds of things when it comes to cocoa and coffee as crops.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. One of the central aspects in my thesis is to understand how agricultural organization, mainly in cocoa and mainly in coffee sector, can work out better ways of structuring themselves so as to become, to have the same or to come closer to the results that have been noticed in Latin America, whereby agricultural organizations are well informed about their duty, their social responsibility. I'm doing my research from the perspective of patrimonial function, which is a kind of, how do I put it, a heuristic element with the help of which I can put together elements that can make coffee sector self-reliant. The patrimonial function of agricultural organization entails that each and every decision that has to be taken by, let's say, a coffee cooperative must bear in mind its duty to perform some efforts to make of its products a social marker. We don't just produce coffee for making money, but we produce coffee to strengthen our identity as a coffee producing country or coffee producing community, which is very important in impacting positively the structuring of coffee sector in West Africa.
Okay. So if I can, really briefly, so, I think of, of protecting or understanding cultural patrimony and the way that the cultural patrimony has an effect on organizational structures, not necessarily patriarchal, hierarchical structures, but things that are more complicated. So, even more fascinating to think about how we as a society think. So we as a society, people in Togo, right? How the Togolese think about these things, right? And how they affect the way they organize, for example, right? In order to be able to protect these things. It's really fascinating. Before we jump, what I want to do is I want to give a quick shout out to Fernando Moreno, who is connected from Colombia. So thank you very much for giving a shout out, letting us know where you're connecting from today. I mean, I think about this and my experience working in mostly Latin America. One of the only places I visited on the African continent is Nigeria. Is that I personally believe that to address a lot of the challenges that we face is that right now there appears to be the individual smallholder farmer, right? A cooperative of hundreds to thousands of members, right? Or a hired labor, an estate holder, right? Where the people are working. And it seems to me that we're sort of missing a kind of, I can't use the word federation in Colombia because federation has a specific legal meaning in Colombia.
Yes.
But it seems to me that there needs to be something in between. Can we create organizational structures around a smaller numbers of farmers, right, who might have interests geographically, right, and who can collaborate to share resources. But I don't see anything like that as being officially supported anywhere in the world. And I don't know if that shows up in what you're doing.
It shows us with what I am trying to venture in. Does the number really matter in terms of having operating and well organized structures? Maybe yes, maybe not. But I think above all, what matters is to really understand the ends that a particular group, a particular community is pursuing. What I have noticed in West Africa, for instance, is that most agricultural organizations are in French. I mean, there is a proper word in French, but in English, I will try to translate it, is some factual organization with less understanding of what it takes or what it entails to belong or to be member of a cooperative. So it needs to have another layer of cultural understanding of cooperative to have it more effective in working out.
This is so fascinating. You know, we talked about language earlier when we talked about, you know, if you want all your judges to share the same language, so they have this commonality. And now we're talking about the use of language. So the way we think about organizational structure sort of culturally, right, in a place like Togo is going to be different from the way we think about organizational structures in Peru.
Yes.
And, you know, and the way we think about them, the language that we use, right, is determinant of the way we think about things. So we buy into the meanings. So, I mean, this is a topic that, you know, we've talked about on the Chocolate Life Live a number of times, like, what is the definition of quality?
Yeah.
Right. And so
that's
you know,
that's a huge question here.
Yeah. So really, really fascinating. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to following along your research, because I think there are some just personally, I have a great deal of research interest in it. What I also want to say is that we'll be back in about 2 months with a live stream where we will be showcasing some of the winners of this. We also hope to have at least one, if not, I'd hope to have a member of the technical jury and a member of the gastronomic jury to be a part of that live stream, as well as some of the participants live, or if not, by, you know, producing videos that we can play from various parts of the world. So I'm really, really excited about what's going on. I want to remind people in closing, because we are getting very near the end, that there is a post on thechocolatelife.com right now about this live stream. You can go into that post and scroll down, and you will find links to the homepage of the AVPA. You will find links to the registration form, to the contest rules, to the 2022 results, and also a link to the live stream we did in April of 2022 with Philippe Jouglar, who's the president of the AVPA. If you want to see what it is we had to say after last year's competition, I put it in there as well, so you can get to it. Now, what I may do is I may put a link to that Susan Theriault book, Crafting the Culture and History of French Chocolate, because for me, it was just completely changed my view of chocolate in France. And so, which helps me understand what it is that the AVPA is doing to this day. And so I want to thank you. Anything you'd like to close out with, Alphonse? Something you'd like to share with everyone?
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the participants online, and thank you for all participants from different countries. And we are happy to welcome you in this year's edition.
Well, I am very, very excited to have to see all the participants as well, and to learn. So I'm going to end by reminding everybody, this is the homepage of thechocolatelife.com. The sponsor of the Chocolate Life Live is The Chocolate Life. If you're not a member, please take a few moments. You can click on the join button. There's always a free membership level. But if you have the resources to support what it is that I do financially, obviously I will not say no. But that's where you can go to keep up to date on what it is that I'm doing. There is, in fact, a post which is dedicated specifically just to the Chocolate Life Live. We'll see that here is the scheduled live stream for today, but there's also a link to every single post for every single live stream that I have done in this series, and you can go there and find that out. And in closing out, what I'd like to do is to remind everybody, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Right. Yeah. Until the next time, everybody. Ciao. And thank you very much, Alphonse. It's been a pleasure to have you as my guest today.
Thank you, Clay.